Goro is a dumbass kid who his parents nor the people around him do not love. One day, he gets chosen as a candidate to participate in a weird game called Kamierabi, and he gets assigned a horned fairy to help him use his powers. Then, he joins hands with the fairy to defeat other candidates in the game, to become the best, and get his wish granted. Goro is an average student who enjoys fawning over hotties on social media at the top of his school building, just like every other teenager. His friend 𝐒𝐿𝐶, on the other hand, enjoys teasing him, and even pranks him by pretending to fall off while being filmed. After school hours, 𝐒𝐿𝐶 tries to make it up to him in class, but Goro bumps into his crush, 𝐒𝐒, who asks him to help her with her social media account. Like a simp, he helps her, and they even exchange IDs. However, 𝐒𝐿𝐶 pisses on his bubble by telling him she's too high class for his dumbass. On his way home, Goro witnesses a cat hit by a car, and no one tries to save it. He then decides to move on, but on getting home, he receives a cold welcome from his stock-loving mother. In his room, he looks back on his shitty day, but he suddenly gets a notification on his phone telling him to state his wish because he's been chosen. Thinking it's spam, he jokingly says he wants to fool around with 𝐒𝐒, and strangely, a horned fairy pops out of his phone. Subsequently, he wakes up the next day thinking it was a dream and rushes to school. At school, he gets the bombastic side-eye from the students due to uploading the video he took of 𝐒𝐿𝐶, and they both get suspended for a week. On their way home, 𝐒𝐿𝐶 opens up about his parents' death, and Goro also tells him about how much he hates his parents. Then, 𝐒𝐒 approaches Goro and apologizes for his suspension. He insists it's not her fault, but she tries to make it up to him, and 𝐒𝐿𝐶 suggests taking her to the arcade room. In the arcade room, Goro and 𝐒𝐒 decide to play a game on the console, but 𝐒𝐿𝐶, the cultured one, has put limited edition videos on the system. After seeing the footage, Goro starts to freak out, but 𝐒𝐒 hugs him from behind, and he freaks out even more. Strangely, his pants drop to the ground, and he starts exercising in front of 𝐒𝐒. Then, the horned fairy comes out and tells him his wish has been granted. Also, she's going to be his partner, who will ensure he becomes the best, among the candidates that have been chosen to kill one another in a cursed rite. He then runs out of the arcade, embarrassed, but realizes the hospital he gets medicine from is gone. The horned fairy then tells him it is the implication of his wish. On his way home, he lashes out at the fairy because he can't comprehend the situation he is in. Then, 𝐒𝐒 calls him from behind and tries to slash him. Luckily, he gets saved by the fairy. It turns out that 𝐒𝐒 is also a candidate who wants to become the best, so she has to end Goro to do so. She draws out a big-ass sword from the ground and attempts to strike Goro, but the dumbass keeps getting saved by his fairy-horned mother. Suddenly, he grabs onto her and begs her to stop, but her greed for power supersedes her zeal for friendship. She beats him up badly and tries to end him with her sword, but it suddenly loses its juice, and Goro uses the opportunity to sprint away. While hiding, Goro sees 𝐒𝐒 draw out another sword from a meat bag, and it scares the shit out of him. He then asks his fairy for her name and how he can defeat 𝐒𝐒 without killing her. She says her name is Lal, and he can do it with her help. Then, 𝐒𝐒 tries to finish off Goro, but this time, he summons a grimoire, the Fool's Sutra, and Lal says some incantations which gets 𝐒𝐒 stabbed by a huge sword. The following day, Goro gets treated like trash by everyone, but Lal commends him for taking on such karma on purpose. Then, he sees 𝐒𝐒 come down from the bus and they make eye contact. After making eye contact, Goro ignores her and walks away. Suddenly, he sees an innocent girl get burned in a wildfire, and the perpetrator stands above a building looking like Aerys Targaryen with a gas mask. Soon, the girl dies and he disappears. Sadly, school gets cancelled for the day due to the incident, and Lal informs Goro that the gas mask dude is a candidate. While complaining about his shitty life, 𝐒𝐿𝐶 startles him, and soon, 𝐒𝐒 comes to meet him for a private talk. During the talk, 𝐒𝐒 scolds him for bringing her back to life, but also asks him to ally with her. Lal, however, doesn't trust the fox, and warns Goro not to join her. Sadly, Goro behaves like a simp and accepts Sas's request, annoying Lal in the process. Meanwhile, 𝐒𝐿𝐶 listens in on them like a rat, but 𝐒𝐒 calls him out of hiding. Lal then gives Goro the news that 𝐒𝐿𝐶 is also a candidate. After a bit of fooling around, 𝐒𝐶𝐂 admits he's a candidate and tells them he can look 5 seconds into the future. Then, Sawa enlightens them about a mobile app they can use to track other candidates and also know their rank. Strangely, Goro is the lowest ranked among the three, while Sawa is the highest ranked. However, Sawa doesn't believe it because she witnessed Goro's powers, and it wasn't that of a loser. Suddenly, a weird mark appears on the app, and 𝐒𝐶𝐂 tells Sawa about it. In a spliff, the hallways get covered in wildfire and the three run into a classroom for cover. Inside, Goro asks 𝐒𝐿 for help, but the spiteful fairy refuses to help him. Sawa then uses her meat bag to draw out her sword and create a new path. While they run, Sawa stops a bit of the fire with an extinguisher before running into another classroom with the others. Sawa then asks them for help, but 𝐒𝐶𝐂 pushes Goro away from a circle of fire after seeing the future for a few seconds. However, Goro drops down into the pit and 𝐒𝐶𝐂 can't save him. Inside the pit, 𝐿𝐿 wakes Goro and tells him they're in Gas Mask's power zone. Soon he walks into the room making bathroom slippers noises and breathing heavily like a dog. Meanwhile, Sawa tries to talk 𝐒𝐶𝐂 out of jumping to save Goro, but ignores her and jumps in anyway. Inside the zone, Gas Mask launches attacks against Goro, but his dumbass keeps getting saved by 𝐿𝐿. Then, he asks to use the Fool's Sutra, but 𝐿𝐿 warns him he might suffer an even bigger karma than before. Nevertheless, he uses the grimoire, and 𝐿𝐿 casts the incantation, rewriting Gas Mask's body so that it repels air. As a result, Gas Mask starts gasping for air for a few seconds before collapsing. However, he sends a final attack on Goro, but 𝐒𝐶𝐂 manages to save him from it this time. After a while, Goro and 𝐒𝐶𝐂 wake up, but 𝐿𝐿 notices Gas Mask's body isn't present anymore. Then Goro faints like a damsel in distress, and 𝐒𝐶𝐂 calls for an ambulance. Meanwhile, Sawa sees 𝐒𝐶𝐂's rank increase rapidly on the app and wonders what his deal is. As a kid, 𝐒𝐶𝐂 has always wished to be able to see the future, so he could save his friends from trouble. However, after gaining this power, all he does is prank Goro, who is mumbling to himself. While they talk, Goro tells him about the misfortune he suffers after using his powers, and 𝐒𝐶𝐂 laughs at him for being a loser. Suddenly, 𝐒𝐶𝐂 snatches his smartphone and he trips over a ball while chasing him. After 𝐒𝐶𝐂 escapes, 𝐿𝐿 scolds Goro for letting an enemy take his phone, but he snaps at her for insinuating 𝐒𝐶𝐂 would try to kill him because of some game. He then tells her how 𝐒𝐶𝐂 was the only one who helped and didn't avoid him when no one else did. At the arcade, Goro sees 𝐒𝐶𝐂 playing games and slaps his head for being a brat. After receiving his phone back, he asks 𝐒𝐶𝐂 for a talk while they play a game together. During the game, Goro suggests running to another country, away from all the fighting and killing, but 𝐒𝐶𝐂 treats his idea as a joke. Soon, the game ends and 𝐒𝐶𝐂 loses. He then tells Goro that he's a good friend and a great guy, hence he doesn't want to see him get killed by somebody else. Suddenly, he turns Goro into one-armed Sunday and calls him an idiot. To prevent Goro from dying, 𝐿𝐿 suggests he uses the Fool's Sutra, but the fool still thinks it's all part of an elaborate prank by 𝐒𝐶𝐂. 𝐒𝐶𝐂 then transforms into his time switcher form, whereby he can move anything through time. After realizing it's not a prank, Goro summons the grimoire, but 𝐒𝐶𝐂 prevents his commands from reaching 𝐿𝐿 by nudging him through time by a few seconds. Then 𝐒𝐶𝐂 starts bringing back his previous experiences and uses them to attack Goro. Goro gets hung from the ceiling with a rope and eventually passes out. However, 𝐿𝐿 summons the grimoire and casts incantations. Suddenly, Goro flies down from above with a staff and regenerates his chopped-off hand. Seeing this makes 𝐒𝐶𝐂 take it up a notch by bringing a large train from the past to hit Goro. In response, Goro blows a hole through the train and it hits 𝐒𝐶𝐂 also. While 𝐒𝐶𝐂 is lying down with half of his side blown off, Goro grabs him and he tells Goro about the future he had seen. In the numerous futures, both of them got killed in horrible ways, but there was only one future with hope. He tells Goro that he's that hope, and he will be the one to change the way their shitty world works. He then apologizes to Goro for hurting him, but it was the only way he could alter the future. He turns to 𝐿𝐿 and asks her to take care of Goro and then warns Goro to stay on his toes. After that, he dies and Goro lets out a scream of grief. The next day, Sawa sees that 𝐒𝐶𝐂's mark has turned grey on the app, and he's also absent from school. Some of her nosy friends then come to her to point out 𝐒𝐔𝐁𝐒𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐏𝐍𝐿 and Goro's absence. They all come up with their theories for that, and soon after, they inform 𝐒𝐒 about the legend of Little Angel. At Goro's home, 𝐿𝐿 suggests going for a walk to change things up, because it's the best thing to do after sending your best friend to an early grave. After getting no response from Goro, she starts reciting some dumb rules about the game, but Goro suddenly stands up and tells her he must find out what 𝐒𝐒𝐁𝐒𝐒𝐑𝐈𝐏𝐍𝐿 laid down his life for, and if fighting is the way to find it, then he will fight. He then asks 𝐿𝐿 about her existence, but she knows nothing about herself, only that she was born because he became a candidate. He then thanks her for her help and she gets emotional. Soon his doorbell rings and it turns out to be 𝐒𝐒. After entering, she makes fun of the messy room, but asks if he's responsible for what happened to 𝐒𝐒𝐁𝐒𝐒. Goro doesn't deny it, but 𝐒𝐒 says she still wants to continue working together with him, and 𝐿𝐿 calls her a sly witch. 𝐒𝐒 then tells Goro about the little angel. She says one of the students in their school is the little angel, and if they tell little angel their trouble, it will be resolved within 3 days. She then suggests finding the little angel together, but 𝐿𝐿 warns Goro not to get used by the witch. Before leaving, 𝐒𝐒 points at 𝐿𝐿 and asks what she is. The next day at school, Goro tells 𝐿𝐿 that she has become visible to candidates and blames her for being a dummy who doesn't know anything. While they bickered, Goro slips out about the little angel, and he gets ambushed by a girl in a lab coat. She introduces herself as Nojima Chika, and she starts begging him to let her join him in unraveling the little angel mystery. After discovering that the weirdo isn't a candidate, Goro agrees to let her in. Outside the school, Chika shows Goro a timid loner, Amano Tatsuya, and tells him that she's sure he's the little angel. Suddenly, Tatsuya gets attacked by a bully, and Chika pushes Goro into the scene to stop him. The bully then challenges Goro to a fight, but while 𝐿𝐿 was ready to kick his butt, Goro the cowardly dog took off with his tail between his legs. While blaming Chika for almost getting beat up, Goro receives a call from 𝐒𝐒, and he describes how both the little angel and the bully holding him look like. Luckily, both of them pass by 𝐒𝐒, and she follows them. At the stairwell, the bully tries to take advantage of Tatsuya, but he keeps refusing him. Then, 𝐒𝐒 approaches them and calls out the bully's candidate name, Control Freak, and he is shocked that she's also a candidate. She then attacks him, and he drops his smartphone in the process. She then finishes him off swiftly. Outside the school, Goro gets impatient after not being able to reach 𝐒𝐒, but the annoying researcher keeps getting on his nerves. Later on, she goes home, and after a while, he also decides to go home and do more research about the little angel. Meanwhile, 𝐒𝐒 is down in the stairwell, and she appears to have been hypnotized. At home, Goro realizes that there were no posts from people after getting their wishes fulfilled by the little angel. Suddenly, he gets a call from Chika asking him to come save her at school, while 𝐿𝐿 also calls his attention to his laptop screen. Upon checking it, he sees a message from the little angel telling him to come to school. A few months back, Tatsuya hid away from bullies in the bathroom, but suddenly the bullies got their asses kicked by someone. It turned out to be Control Freak, and he took Tatsuya out of the bathroom. Presently in the science storage room, Goro almost gets beaten up by Chika, who already set a trap at the door. She then tells him about some zombies in the school, and one soon appears behind him. Goro tries his best to prevent it from entering, but it gets defeated by Control Freak. They then run out of the room and other zombies start chasing them. While running, Control Freak tells Goro that the zombies were caused by the little angel, and he acted like a jerk earlier to prevent more victims. Soon they escape to the student council office, and there they realize Control Freak is the student council president. Goro tries to scream, but they quickly cover his stupid mouth. Then, Control Freak tells them how he used to be bullied by hooligans and how he thought the world would be better off without them. However, his grandpa told him to view things from the hooligans' perspective. Then he worked out like a Chad, dyed his hair and stopped being a wimp. Soon he was able to talk to the bullies and finally understood their bad circumstances. After transferring to their school, he decided to help out bullies and soon became council president. However, Tatsuya, who was his vice president, hated bullies and suggested eliminating them instead. Of course, his idea got him beaten up often, but one day the bullies suddenly became obedient and quiet. Tatsuya then told the council president about his new mysterious power of rewriting their brains. He then made one of the bullies jump out of the window and asked the council president to help him rid the school of bullies. However, the council president grabbed him angrily and Tatsuya's phone dropped. He then realized Tatsuya was the control freak and took the phone away from him. Sadly, Sawa's nosiness makes the president lose the phone and Tatsuya eventually grabs it. Suddenly, Chika runs out to teach Tatsuya a lesson and they follow her. Soon they get chased by zombies and Lal tells Goro Tatsuya's location. Along the lines, Chika gets caught up by the zombies and Goro takes the president to Tatsuya's location. At the auditorium, Goro gets suppressed by Tatsuya's zombies, including Sawa, but the president walks towards Tatsuya. Tatsuya then tries to convince him to see things his way, but the president starts to scold Tatsuya instead. His mean comments make Tatsuya lose control, and he unleashes his powers fully. Then, Chika saves Goro from bondage with her electric rod, and Goro summons the Fool's Sutra. He then grabs his staff and rewrites Tatsuya's powers. As a result, Tatsuya starts to sink into the ground, but the president grabs his hand. Sadly, Tatsuya decides to give up like a coward and lets go of the president's hand, falling into infinite darkness. After the battle, Chika gets approached outside the school by a boy with an eye patch, pushing a sleepy pink head on a wheelchair. He asks Chika if keeping her phone turned off as a candidate wasn't a bit too risky, but she tells him she managed to gather information as a result of it. After their discussion, they leave the school premises. A year ago, a boy brought a gift for an idol he loved, Iyo Futana. However, when he entered to give her the gift, he saw that she had committed suicide, and a bloody note was written on her mirror. In Goro's room, Lal points out how close he is to becoming the best after defeating Little Angel, but Goro keeps staring at Iyo's poster like a creep. He then burst out about Iyo's anniversary concert and how long he had waited for it. However, he has been charged for 2 tickets, and now that his best friend is gone, he is a loner. Both Sawa and Chika rejected his invitation, and his only available choice is president. At the concert, Goro meets the president who has been scaring people away because of his gangster looks. He thanks Goro for inviting him out, and Goro tells him to enjoy Iyo's songs to the fullest. However, the president asks Goro about the flying creature, Lal by his side, and Goro is surprised he can see her. Soon, they realize he's with Tatsuya's phone, and he tells them that he couldn't bring himself to throw it out. As a result, Lal deduces that Tatsuya's candidacy has been passed to the president due to his withdrawal, and now he has to fight other participants to death. Strangely, the consequences don't faze the president, and he offers to fight alongside them. While Lal and Goro bicker, Iyo appears and causes a scream from her fans. She then tells her fans to wait a bit longer, and they cheer for her. Goro, the fanboy, starts to cry with joy and gets his disgusting snot on the president's tie. He then goes to pee, and Lal wonders how many bodily fluids he would emit at once. Unfortunately, all the male bathrooms are packed, and he uses Lal as a lookout while he sneaks into the female bathroom to relieve himself. Inside, he overhears Iyo talking to her manager about cancelling the show due to unforeseen circumstances. After the man leaves, Iyo tries to calm herself down, but she sees Goro hiding in the bathroom. She then accuses him of being behind the bomb threat that is about to ruin her concert. Goro in turn tries to defend himself, but Lal points out that Iyo is a candidate. Suddenly, they hear a loud bang outside, and while fans flee the scene, the president notices a strange guy smirking. Goro then brings her out of the bathroom already covered in smoke and towards the stage. At the stage, they see the strange guy and Iyo attacks him. Goro tries to get her off him, but she screams that he was the one who killed her a year ago. Sadly, the original Iyo took her life after being stalked by a vile pervert, and the current Iyo is the boy who entered her room. His power is complete mimicry, enabling him to take on Iyo's form, voice, memories, and even her pain. The pervert then tries to run, but Iyo attacks him with spikes. Goro defends it and tries to convince her to look the other way, but eventually, he gets pierced by one of the spikes. This causes Iyo to blame herself, but Goro crawls to her and comforts her. Following that, the pervert tries to run again, but the president ambushes him and punches him in the face. Later at Goro's house, he watches her performance on his laptop and dances like a dunce. Then she mentions his name on stage, and he starts to cry, making the president die of laughter. Suddenly, Goro starts bleeding and collapses. President then starts to panic, but Lal tells him it's the price of his power. In Sawa's room, she dreams about her childhood and how she recited the house rules to her parents. Then she gets woken up by a call from the president, telling her about Goro's situation. At first she wanted to act like a bitch, but she changed her mind. On her way out, she bids farewell to her roommate Kota, who's a chunk of meat behind a door. At the hospital, Sawa tells the president that they should kill Goro now that he's hospitalized, and her suggestion shocks him because he thinks they're all on the same side. Then Lal calls her a rotten bitch and threatens to destroy her. However, Sawa calls her bluff, but Lal summons the grimoire, which scares Sawa. To stop the conflict, the president hits Lal and scolds her for being petty. He also scolds Sawa for being a scared crybaby, but Sawa runs away out of embarrassment. After she leaves, Lal confesses that she can't use any power without Goro, and makes the president promise not to tell anyone her secret. After storming out, Sawa sits on a chair and hears a voice asking what she's doing. She then gets startled but sees it is just Chika. She tells Chika that she's just trying to find an exit and leaves her. Like an annoying tick, Chika follows her around, telling her to use where she came from. Out of suspicion, Sawa asks if she's a candidate, but nothing shows up on her app. Then, she opens a strange door and gets sucked into a dark abyss, while Chika says, "I told you so." Strangely, she appears in her house and sees her younger self reciting the house rules. After realizing it's not a dream, she rushes towards the door and calls Kota. After a while, she holds her younger self and cries due to Kota suffering alone in the dark room. Then Kota tells her he is going to be fine, and young Sawa tries to open the door, but her hands can't reach it. This makes adult Sawa break open the door with her sword. Unfortunately, no one is in the room, and their parents arrive. While wondering why they're still alive, Sawa meets them with her sword and ends them. Following that, she comes to the rooftop through a door and sees Chika, who tells her that she's just been to a parallel world. Sawa then blames her for making her kill her parents twice in one lifetime. Then, Chika transforms into Gas Mask and attacks Sawa. This time, she defeats Sawa easily and puts her in a burning wildfire, like the Mad King. While she screamed in pain, she remembered Kota's words, assuring her he'll be fine, and she stabs herself with her knife. Chika then offers her condolences, but suddenly, a younger Sawa appears with a huge knife. Chika tries to attack her again, but it doesn't work, and she runs out of ammo. Then, Sawa threatens to kill her friend if she doesn't surrender. After surrendering, Chika gets stabbed with her trident, and the perpetrator is the eye patch guy. He then tries to attack Sawa, but his sister in the wheelchair stops him, and they leave through a dark hole. In a penthouse, a weirdo calls up a manga artist and suggests a few changes to his manga volume. However, the artist refuses him, but he threatens to spread false news about the artist and cuts him off. After the call, he summons his gear and starts typing false news about the artist on it. At the arcade, President Koki and Lal throw a recovery party for Goro, and Lal gobbles down meat like a glutton. After a while, they unveil their perfect surprise for Goro, and it turns out to be Iyo. His heart almost jumps out of his chest and freaks out even more after receiving a present from her. Iyo then thanks them for inviting her over as a friend, and Goro asks for anything she would like to do. She then suggests games, and Goro rushes to the TV to get his console started. However, he remembers the awful situation with Sawa and hesitates. He then tries to convince her to do something else, but Iyo hurriedly turns it on. They end up seeing an R-rated clip, and Goro decides to die of embarrassment. Strangely, the TV doesn't switch off even after being unplugged. Then the unclad lady on the TV pops her head through the screen and startles them. She then asks them for help as fellow candidates, but Iyo screams at her to put on clothes. After she goes back into the TV, Koki and Goro still can't believe their eyes. At a cafe, Sawa reads about the castaway manga artist, and Chika thanks her for healing her wound. However, Sawa forces her to spill information about her friends from that night. She then tells her about Ryo, the girl in the wheelchair, Kyo, the girl's brother, and Keita, an insane candidate. She elaborates that Ryo isn't a fighter, but Kyo and Keita are on a completely different level. She then tells Sawa that Keita is behind the news about the martial artist and his ability to do anything just by moving his fingers. Back at the arcade, the TV lady, Mitsuko, tells them about Keita and how he has abducted her actress friend, 𝐒𝐒𝐿. She has tried reporting to the police, but it didn't work. That's why she needs their help in finding 𝐒𝐒𝐿. Suddenly, she gets a call from Keita and he happens to know the names of everyone in the room. He then shows Mitsuko a video of 𝐒𝐒𝐿 trapped in a glass room with a bomb, and she has only 3 hours before it explodes. After the call ends, the arcade gets surrounded by police and it turns out they've all been identified as terrorists on the run. After realizing it is Keita's doing, Mitsuko teleports them from the room with her tap dance power, Mercurius. At the cafe, Sawa suggests an alliance with Chika, but she says an alliance defeats the whole point of one person becoming the best. Suddenly, they see police cars passing by and discover that their friends have been branded as terrorists. At an unknown location, the supposed terrorists hide and discuss their next move. Then, Sawa approaches them and suggests an alliance between all of them. She also exposes Chika as gas mask, and Goro blames her for trying to roast him alive. However, with each of their special reasons, they all agree to the alliance, and they soon get surrounded by drones controlled by the maniac, Keita. At Hajime Hospital, Pio asks Kyo if the cause of all the noise outside is scary, but Kyo assures her that nothing scary will ever happen to her. A year ago, Mitsuko fed birds in front of a shop, and 𝐒𝐒𝐿 scolded her for littering the storefront. However, they talk for a while and Mitsuko mentions her desire to be able to zoom off anywhere she wants like birds. However, in the present, Mitsuko and her new allies are surrounded by drones, and Sawa asks if any of them can fight long range. Sadly, all their powers are lame and the drones start shooting at them. They run for cover, and Io tries to block some of the bullets with her powers. They then ask Mitsuko to teleport them away from the scene, but she couldn't envision where to go. The pressure then gets to her, and she messes up her powers. Meanwhile, at Keita's penthouse, 𝐒𝐒𝐿 has just 4 minutes left to live, and Keita seems to have trouble finding Mitsuko. The fool then teases 𝐒𝐒𝐿 for having a weak-ass friend who is just all talk but no game. While he yaps on like a broken radio, 𝐒𝐒𝐿 ignores him, and eventually, he gets tired of her. Soon he gets a call from Chokubo, the manga artist, telling him he has already applied his suggested ideas to the week's manga issue. After hearing this, Keita happily goes over to read the manga, and as soon as he flips the pages, he gets hit with a magnificent punch. Then Mitsuko comes out of the manga and mocks him. 1 hour ago, Chokubo opened the door to his room and Mitsuko, Goro, and Io entered through it. After a while, they figure out they've teleported to the wrong place, and the others must be in a different place too. Soon they recognize Chokubo as the manga artist from the news, and he explains his affliction with Keita to them. He tells them how Keita had spread false news about him just to get dumbass ideas into his manga. Goro then asks Lal if there's anything he can do about it with his power, but Lal tells him the target is poorly defined, and he could end up paying a price without getting a worthwhile result. Io then points out that Keita loves Chokubo's manga, and if they could get him to read it, Mitsuko could teleport through it to his location. Sadly, Chokubo tells them the manga isn't scheduled to feature in the week's issue, and now they're back to square one. However, Goro uses the Fool's Sutra to put the manga back into the week's issue, and Lal casts the incantation to make it happen. After it gets done, Mitsuko does her usual tap dance and teleports to Keita's penthouse. At the penthouse, Keita has been rushed with a mouthful of fists by Mitsuko and 𝐒𝐒𝐿. Like a sore loser, he starts bitching because they ganged up on him, but Mitsuko forces him to undo all the bullcrap he has done. After he does this, Mitsuko tap dances and sends the idiot to the South Pole with a Mercurius kick move. Meanwhile, in an electric field boxing ring, Kyo is disappointed that Keita ended up losing to some no-name frauds. He has already beaten Chika to a pulp, but Sawa and Koki are still standing, even after being bruised heavily by Kyo. Kyo tells Koki that he never thought he would meet a powerful enemy like him, but Koki charges up the electric wires ready for the next round. During the incident with Mitsuko's teleportation, Koki, Sawa, and Chika get teleported to a different location, and they end up facing Kyo in a fight. A year ago, Pyo saved Chika from jumping off her parents' hospital building due to the pressure of studying she received from her parents. After that, they both found comfort in themselves as friends. In the electric boxing ring, Kyo commends Koki's powers, but Koki asks him why he's trying to become the best. Then Kyo tells him that his purpose is to realize the most righteous future for the world. Sadly, Koki isn't buying his philosophical crap, and he punches him. Strangely, Kyo smiles as he gets hit and he tries to provoke Koki into killing him. Kyo then threatens to kill his friends, family, and everyone else who is unfit for his world. After hearing this, Koki angrily attacks him and hits him till he passes out. After this, Koki can't recognize himself, and Sawa asks if he has defeated Kyo. Koki turns off his power, but Chika warns him not to. Then Sawa hits Kyo with a powerful strike and thinks that he's a goner for sure. However, Chika tells them that death doesn't mean the same thing for Kyo, and suddenly, Koki gets stabbed from behind with a trident. Also, Sawa gets stabbed too, and Chika is the only one left. She then tells Kyo that Pyo doesn't want the world he envisions, but mocks her for being a weakling who doesn't take fights seriously. However, Chika transforms into Gas Mask and decides not to give up, even though she knows she can't win. Meanwhile, an announcement is being made about a hack in the government system, causing the perpetrator to manipulate the news media. While the citizens discuss the news in the streets, Goro and Io wonder why they haven't been able to reach their other allies. While wondering, Io asks about the true significance of their fight to become the best, but Lal comes out saying only the creator of the game knows, and she tells them they're just pawns chosen on a whim. Angrily, Io asks her why she's always hanging around Goro and what she's after. Lal then says she's his guardian, but Goro tells Io not to take her seriously, since her goofy ass doesn't even know her identity. However, Io finds that strange since they all have their reasons for participating in the game. She then asks Lal if she has an evil reason that she just can't tell them, and Lal turns mute. Strangely, Goro asks Io to stop pressing Lal because even though she's a weirdo, he doesn't want to suspect her, and Io apologizes. Suddenly, blood starts raining from the sky, and Io starts to panic. Sadly, Goro thinks it's just rain, and Lal figures out that Goro has lost his senses of taste, smell, heat, and cold, and now he can't make out colors. At the top of a building, Kyo tells Pyo about the story of a cat shut in a small box, and inside is a bottle filled with poison gas. He then asks her what will happen to the cat after a minute, but she replies that there is no poison in the bottle, and the cat is alive. Kyo then says that the moral of the story is that, as long as the box isn't open, every kind of world exists inside. Hence, she is a powerful being, and he is the powerful being's cat, who claws the bad guys presuming to know what's inside the box. Suddenly, a large ball filled with bodies breaks through the sky, and the bodies start dropping from the sky. Witnessing the scene in the streets, Goro calls to Lal, but she warns him about the price he might have to pay, and Io also persuades him not to do anything. However, he insists on helping, and he summons the Fool's Sutra. He then grabs his staff and flies towards the red ball of bodies. 1 year ago, Kyo told Pyo a story about the stars in space, and how the dark parts of the night sky all lead to faraway stars. He then tells her that the only being who can see the light from all the stars is the Creator who can live forever. However, he wishes he could also live forever, but he has less time than ordinary people. Kyo then assures him that their father, who's a smart doctor, will find a way to cure his disease. Soon their father arrives and calls them over for dinner. The next day, Pyo discovers Kyo is gone, and her father tells her that Kyo will spend some time in a faraway hospital and tells her to be patient until he comes back. However, she discovers her dad getting frustrated in a room full of screens, but she doesn't know what to make of it. His frustration extends to the dinner table, and he eventually breaks down into tears like a baby after discovering his research has failed. Later that night, Pyo goes into the research room and the screens ask for her wish because she has been chosen, but she gets scared and runs out of the house. After a while of running, she sees Kyo on top of a cliff and runs to meet him. Sadly, she gets hit by a vehicle and ends up in a coma. While in a coma, she finds herself in a night sky, but her real body is now blind. In the night sky, she cries deeply about not wanting to be alone, and suddenly she gets asked once again for her wish. This time, she wishes to get back her brother, and like magic, 𝐒𝐂 appears and promises to wipe away the whole world that distresses her like Thanos. Fast forward to the present. Goro sees that backstory and wonders if he was dreaming, but he soon enters the parallel world and meets 𝐒𝐂. 𝐒𝐂 then tells him about Pio's power of materializing non-existent realities as parallel worlds. Through her power, he can link numerous worlds together or eliminate them. Sadly, he can't save her with these powers, and that's why he needs Goro's ability to twist the very rules of the world. He then asks Goro to join him, but even after understanding his views, Goro refuses. As a result, 𝐒𝐂 tries to steal his powers and attacks him. Due to Goro's messed up senses, he couldn't quickly defend himself from 𝐒𝐂's attacks, and he got his butt whooped badly. Then, 𝐒𝐂 takes a dig at him by promising to give him another 𝐒𝐒 in exchange for his powers. This triggers Goro, and he stabs 𝐒𝐂 with his trident. After that, Goro realizes his wounds aren't regenerating, but 𝐒𝐂 appears behind him. Goro wonders how, and he informs him that he's from a different parallel world, and his goal is to eliminate fear from the world and create a world where nothing can hurt 𝐒𝐂. After realizing 𝐒𝐂 doesn't know what his sister truly wants, Goro tells him to ask her and sends an attack toward the sleepy 𝐒𝐂. After the attack hits her, 𝐒𝐂 starts crying on her lap, thinking she's dead. However, she calls him, and he realizes that she can see, but strangely, 𝐒𝐂 and the world around start glitching like the Matrix. Soon a dark hole brings the three of them back to the real world, and a guy tries to help 𝐒𝐂 up. However, 𝐒𝐂 shoves a trident in his back and scares the rest of the onlookers. Soon they start throwing things at 𝐒𝐂, and Goro, who can't move, asks 𝐒𝐂 to help 𝐒𝐂. Sadly, as a result of his powers, 𝐒𝐂 doesn't recognize him again, and the citizens start beating 𝐒𝐂 up. In the streets, the citizens blame 𝐒𝐂 and Goro for their misfortunes and call them monsters. Then, Chika arrives and cries because she can't help 𝐒𝐂. Koki and Sawa also arrive at the scene and assume someone has finished off 𝐒𝐂. However, they couldn't recognize Goro anymore and thought he was just another candidate. Sawa then decides to act like a bitch and kill Goro, but 𝐒𝐂 stops her, claiming something is not right. She then elaborates that Goro might be someone important to them, but due to the enemy attack, their brains have been wiped of memories of him. Nevertheless, her excuse doesn't sway Sawa, who then strikes Goro with her knife, but Lal ends up getting stabbed instead. Lal claims she won't let Goro die, and she'll make him the best at all costs. After seeing her, 𝐒𝐂 and Koki stop Sawa from going further, but she selfishly lashes out at them, claiming they must fight till one of them gets the wish. While she bleeds out pixies, Lal calls Sawa a selfish witch, and how unfit she is to be the best, because the best should be someone who listens to someone else's wish. Meanwhile, Goro hears a wish while lying helpless on the ground. In Tatsuya's case, all he wished for was to become the best, and get rid of the disparity between humans which causes the privileged ones to trample on the unfortunate. In 𝐒𝐂's case, he wanted to eliminate illnesses and all predetermined paths toward a future humans can't choose from. In 𝐒𝐒's case, he lost his parents at an early age and couldn't trust anyone because of that. He wished that everyone would overcome their hardships because people who don't die weak and forgotten by the world. Soon Goro comes across his parents and realizes how he was conceived. It made him sick, and after puking, Lal asks him if he now remembers his true wish. He then tells her he wanted someone to entrust their wish to him, not just Sawa, but all the wishes of all those who have been fighting. Lal then tells him that a person who wishes for that is called the best. In the real world, Lal cries and thanks Goro for caring about her. She then decides to become his final power, and she turns into pixies. Suddenly a surge of power bursts through Goro, and he levitates in a shining light. Soon people around start disappearing, and their smartphones get dropped. Sawa and the others start to panic, but there's nowhere to run. Soon, Mitsuko arrives and she suddenly drops her phone. After realizing what's inside the smartphones, 𝐒𝐂 starts to freak out. One by one, They all start to get absorbed until Pio stops Goro and insists she won't let him take her wish away from her. She then destroys him, and the impact leaves a huge hole in the streets. Meanwhile, in the South Pole, Keita doesn't seem to be enjoying his time at all. Out of frustration, he breaks his smartphone, but after seeing what's inside, he lets out a creepy smile. In Japan, a politician addresses the citizens about the mysterious terrorist incident that escalated from the spread of false information to the hacking of drone weapons control, as well as a disturbance in which some chemical weapon caused hundreds of people to suffer a mass hallucination. Then, he blames it all on the current administration and proposes that his party will strive toward a government that truly reflects the will of its people. A typical political stunt,